clear skies in Texas, very characteristic of a La Nina year. Let's take a look at that surface map. We've got some more cold air coming down out of the Dakotas and Montana, and you can see those temperatures up there. They are running below zero, well below zero, as a matter of fact, and snow from Cheyenne out to western Nebraska, and the temperatures with that very cold, single digits. The snow just north of Denver at this hour, just north of Goodland. Down in Oklahoma and Texas, not so much of that cold air coming south. We're seeing 40s and 50s in that region. And as you go further south, we pick up 70s in the Rio Grande region. Out there in the western U.S., we have another storm system lined up. There it is off the northwestern Pacific coast. Rain coming down at Portland, Seattle, Quileute, all the way out into the Pacific. And as you get inland into the colder air, some snow. In the eastern U.S., that snowstorm that we had in Virginia, New Jersey yesterday, that has moved on off out to sea, and you can see the temperatures have come up nicely up into the 40s, but we're still left with this occlusion in the Great Lakes region, and with that, some substantial lake effect snows affecting Marquette, Grand Rapids, and just about all the other vulnerable areas of the Great Lakes. The Gulf Stream active off the Florida coast, helping to feed this area of storms along this old dormant front south of North Carolina. Let's go out into the Pacific and we'll get a better look at that system. Looks like a 994 millibar low. That's probably heading for British Columbia. And taking a look at Alaska, they are in the icebox. Arctic air mass, 1055 millibar high, and we're seeing minus 33 at Fort Yukon. Now, I don't have the data for Canada. They've had some telecommunications issues, but however, take a look at these plots out in Yukon. They've got some very cold air down to minus 51 at Dawson, minus 47 at Mayo, and on the warm side, minus 40 at Whitehorse. Anybody want to be there? And we did have those strong drainage winds out there in Palmer and Wasilla, but you can see some of that going on up there, up on the North Slope. The station here in northern Yukon reporting 43 gusting to 56 knots, and that's probably with a temperature of about 5 degrees. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. Looking at Canada, cold northwesterly flow sweeping from the Beaufort Sea down to the Hudson Bay region, and there's that long ridge, 1040s and 1050 millibar high across western Canada, and then just a quick look out in the Atlantic. We've got quite a strong storm system up there, 935 millibar low, southwest of Iceland. That thing's really wrapped up, and on the south side, cold westerly flow. And let's start talking about atmospheric rivers. The Pacific is active. We've got this first river starting out at the beginning of the period off the Oregon coast and bringing that forward about, let's see, that's going to be about midnight. Looks like a 700 to 800 sliver coming into the Portland area. So certainly quite a bit of rain possible there. More of it coming into Oregon. That looks like around Portland. Into tomorrow night, and then here comes round 2. That's going to be delayed a little bit until about the 9th or 10th. Most of that heading for British Columbia, and then another slug coming in for the 11th. That one also British Columbia, and then another for, that could just as well be British Columbia as well. So active out there in the Pacific, not so much in the northern areas, the Gulf of Alaska. Now let's take a look at the upper air. And that's where the fun stuff always happens. So what do we got here? We've got a ridge on the west coast. And of course, we associate a ridge with fair weather and clear skies. Not so much here. We can still have those storm systems riding through the flow, producing rain and wind, all that stuff, and that's what's happening out in that part of the continent. And we've also got this very strong trough in the eastern U.S. that's going to be driving a winter storm. Let me show you that. I'm going to go back to the surface chart. There we go. We'll pan that south, and I forgot to mention this little wave right here. That's going to be what's heading for Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. That's going to amplify, interact with some of this cold air up to the north, interact with some of this moisture down along the Gulf Coast, and we're expecting snow. Winter storm warnings from West Virginia into eastern Kentucky. And of course, we've got winter storm warnings for other parts of the country, Colorado with that front coming south, and of course with that Pacific system making landfall. Lots of effects stretching inland into the Great Basin region. And that brings us back to the upper air chart. That's that wave coming out of the Great Plains that's going to interact with that system there in the south central U.S. Some good jet energy coming down the backside. That, of course, is going to result in amplification of that wave, and you can see it take place right there, sharpening up quite a bit as it moves into the northeastern U.S. Some ridging out across the Rockies for Friday, and you can see that we're in a progressive pattern. Lots of waves, ridges and troughs, and they're moving pretty well. This is not really a blocked pattern. We can see that it gets very energetic out there in the Pacific, some massive energy, 140 knots out there. That'll keep that storm track coming into British Columbia. But it looks like strong long wave ridging on the west coast will prevent a lot of that from getting into California. And of course, that means downwind from that region. Not much going on either. So this is very much a La Nina pattern. And then at the very end, let's see if anything happens. Not really. This cutoff low in the southwestern U.S., that could be a weather maker. But it looks like the stronger jet flow remaining up in western Canada into the Great Lakes area around mid-month. Let's take a look at the real-time satellite imagery. Always interesting looking at the conditions across the country. Southwestern U.S. looking pretty clear. That's quite a change from about a week ago. Some of that Thule fog stratus still hanging on in the San Joaquin Valley, but overall, you can see as we head into evening, look at the Grand Canyon right around here. The detail really comes out as we get those sun angles getting lower and lower. In the Great Basin region, northern Nevada, northern California, it gets a little bit colder. We pick up faster flow. You can see the mountain wave activity. That's definitely very prominent, indicating a strong westerly component to the upper level flow. And then going up to Washington, we get into the soup, and that's where you really need to kind of back off and look at the infrared and water vapor imagery. It's already nighttime in the Dakotas, but earlier, that's how things looked. That cold air is spilling south, and they've got a lot of snow cover on the ground, which means that's going to favor polar air production. Get that radiational cooling through this area. The insulated ground with a cold air mass lying on top, that's going to mean cold weather. And there's some of that snow there in Nebraska. Those bands spreading over the entire state, entering the area of Kansas north of I-70. So there is some heavy precip within this and some very cold temperatures at the surface. You can see that does look active in Colorado. What is that? Kind of looks like dust maybe. Let's back off on that. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I'm not sure if that's just the light or if that's dust. But we go to the METAR observations. Well, it's quite a change there. Look at that 10 degrees, or yeah, 10 up there at Denver, up to, let's see, 58 at Colorado Springs. Wow, that's pretty crazy there. 58 at Pueblo. So you'd have kind of a shocking driving north on I-25. So with that air mass being so energetic, I wouldn't be surprised to see some dust within that, but nothing explicit on the meteor observations. Texas at this hour, clear. Boring. Okay. The southeastern U.S., there is a frontal boundary through that region. Looks like maybe a few high-based showers in southern Alabama, down there in Mississippi. North Carolina warming up. Still some cold air advection along the coastal regions, and out near the Gulf Stream, some showers. Heading up into the northeast U.S., it is nighttime, so we're on the infrared imagery, but if we run this back a little bit, yep, cirrus, frontal bands across much of the eastern coastal regions, and then we get back into the Pittsburgh area, Ohio. We've got cold air advection, and let's head into that region. We get back into that occluded low across the Great Lakes. We've got lake effect snows across western Michigan, the UP of Michigan, and the lee side of Lake Huron. I don't know if we've got any off. No, it's not. We don't have the right pattern to get that at Cleveland and Buffalo. But as the flow becomes more northwesterly, we should see some of that develop in that area. And now it is time to put together our forecast. Starting out at the current time, there's that 1047 millibar high coming south, and we're going to watch down here in Texas for the development of that new winter weather system. There it is, a weak wave, but very potent, developing in Mississippi, Alabama, and that snow gets going overnight into tomorrow. And by tomorrow evening, there it is, moving into the Appalachians. Back behind it, a good push of cold air sinking south. Let me get that position there. There's that cold air coming south, but it does not make much headway to the west. However, the west is going to be dealing with this Pacific system. Coming into Seattle, Vancouver mostly is rain, but looks like maybe quite a bit of snow for the higher elevations. And out in the eastern U.S., as that departing system grazes the northeast coast, possibly some heavy snow once again for parts of New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and up towards Long Island and Cape Cod. Then we get into kind of a mild pattern. Next, Alberta Clipper coming south. That's going to be for Saturday and Sunday. There it is. Cold air pretty much filters in through the entire U.S. Some convective activity through the southeastern U.S. rapidly pushed on off into the Atlantic. And that leaves us with possibly a quiet week next week. And that concludes our Wednesday edition of Forecast Lab. A special thanks to our newest Patreon supporters, James Taylor and Stuart Annendorf. Thank you very much for helping to keep this program going. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Take care, and we will see you back here for the Friday edition. Bye-bye.
Is gasoline rationing imminent? A report at 11.